Hello and welcome to this section. In this section, we will learn the knowledge related to Boolean variables. Boolean variables are the last member of our basic variables. The data variables we learned later are a series of compounds based on these three variables. This section mainly includes the following knowledge points. First, we'll tell you what our Boolean variables are. Next, let's talk about the usage scenario of Boolean variable. Then finally, let's talk about a basic use of Boolean variables. First of all, let's talk about a brief introduction of a Boolean variable and its widget. In fact, a Boolean variable is a very simple type. It corresponds to a data type such as Boolean in our JavaScript. There are only two states for a value, namely, true or false. Its common function is to judge whether a value is true or false. Then let's talk about the common use scenarios of Boolean variables. In many cases, we will use our Boolean variables, including the ternary expressions we learned. We will also use our Boolean variables, but Boolean variables are not irreplaceable, because as long as the text is not empty, or one of its values is not 0, it can be used as a real Boolean variable type, so we may use it later. There are very few scenarios in which we really use our Boolean variables, but many of our scenarios are extended by our use of Boolean variables. Of course, we still suggest that for better project maintainability, when we judge whether it is true or false, we try to use one of our Boolean variables for judgment. Then let's talk about some basic uses of Boolean variables. Similarly, open our editor, input our Boolean variable in the application name, and then click the Create button. Similarly, under Frontend, we add a page first, and then we add our Boolean variable under the page. Where is the Boolean variable? As you can see below, it has a 0 to 1 under our text variable, so it shows that it actually has only two values, either true or false. So we click on it to make an addition. Let's select the Boolean variable. Let's look at its property first. Its property can't be more concise. We don't even need to input it manually. Let's take a look. If its switch is on and off, what value does it represent? Then again, let's add a button here, and we'll print the value of our Boolean variable. Then again, when it is clicked, we let it trigger the Boolean variable to print one of its current values, and let's have a preview. Similarly, here, let's check and switch to console, and then I click to see that the Boolean variable value here is true, and I can see that it is true. What's the big difference between this place and the text place? Here, in order to facilitate everyone's learning, I'll pull out another text here, and I'll write a true in the text. A button copies a copy, and the following one is called text printing, and the above one is called Boolean printing. I will print the text and slightly modify one of its values, which will become an action to let the text variable print its current value. Let's preview it again. Then first, we click Boolean print to see that this is the printing of our Boolean variables, and then click text print to see that there is a very big difference here. What is the biggest difference? Look at a Boolean variable here. What color is it? Is it our blue variable? What color does our text become? Is it one of our black ones? Let's take another look here. If we use one of our numerical variables for printing, what is its value? I can't write in a numerical variable here, so I will write a 123 here. The same side will change the name to our numerical printing. The same way, we will modify it through the event. Here, we will let the numerical variable print its current value, and then go to a preview. 123 we can find that if it is a variable of our system, our location, or its numerical variable, its variable value is printed in our console. It is blue. We must pay attention to this. It is a blue value. Okay, after we have separated the types related to our text variables, numerical variables, and Boolean variables, let's delete all the text variables and numerical variables we used to learn. Let's just leave a Boolean variable that we're going to learn in this lesson, and then let's take a look at the series of actions that a Boolean variable has. Similarly, we add a widget of a button under our page. We trigger a series of events of our Boolean variable through such a button. When this button is clicked, we call a series of action of our Boolean variable. we can see that his action is very simple. There is an assignment here, one is set to true and one is set to false. In fact, we are not afraid to tell you that the so-called set to true and set to false only make it very convenient for you to make an assignment. Here, let's first show you the role of its assignment. In the assignment here, you can manually input. We have just seen through printing that for our Boolean variable, it has only two values, either true or false, so here we copy it, true, but you must pay attention to it. Here we set it to T2U1, we can see that it belongs to a blue. What does the blue indicate? It is a type of a keyword property, so we have copied it to true here. Then, similarly, we can see that our Boolean variable here is copied as a true type for it. Then, similarly, we click a Boolean variable on the false side, and we copy it as a type of false. So what's another classic action? Is that our alternation is set to place and false. What effect does this have? Here we can give you a demonstration. Here is an alternation. What does alternation mean? So let's click here. When it is clicked, we perform an action on our Boolean variable, which is a type such as true or false at the time of alternation. Then we perform an action on the Boolean variable to let it print the current value. Then we will preview it. First, we will set our Boolean variable to true by default. You can see that it is of true type, right? When I click alternate, you can see that it becomes a type of false, and now I set it to a type of false, and I click alternate, it becomes a true. So what does alternation mean? Alternation means that if such a Boolean variable is true, it will become false if you click it. If you click it again, it will become true. However, there are other ways to write such an alternation. Here I also share it with you to facilitate your accumulation. If you use such a scene, you may have a better way to use it. Here, let's change the name to manual alternation. How can we make a manual alternation? As I told you just now, Boolean variation has only two values, either true or false. If it is true, it is true. If it is false, it is false. The same principle, if it is translated into our 0-1 system, it means that if it is true, it is 1, if it is false, it is 0, so here, we can copy our Boolean variables, we can copy our Boolean variables, we can copy, y. What does it mean that an assignment is equal to 1 minus itself? That is, if so far it is false, is it 0? So 1 to 0 is copied for itself. For 1, it becomes a value added. Similarly, if it was originally value added, then 1 minus 1 becomes 0, and it becomes a false value. So this one subtracts a Boolean variable, which is a common practice. Let's do a manual alternation. Here we still print it out for our Boolean variable to see one of the effects. Then we have a preview here. First, we set it as a competition, and it will be a place. Then we click manual alternation, and we can see that y subtracts a number, and it will become a false. Then we use false and then 1 to 0, and it will become a real state. So this is how we write manually alternating. For our Boolean variables, we often use them in conjunction with our ternary expressions. For a deeper study of Boolean variables, we will go back to deepen our understanding of Boolean variables after we learn the ternary expressions. That's all the content of this section. So far, we have learned all the basic variables. Thank you for watching this section.